G'day, Richard here. As you may know, we're back and making new podcasts, but with work commitments we may not finish a new podcast every week, so we're planning to handpick some of our favourite episodes from our back catalogue and republish them with the updated commentary of why we liked each episode and what has changed about the subject since the podcast originally aired. Last time I handpicked a show, it was an episode where I spoke to Dr. Sarah Hallberg, who has shepherded one of the most important clinical studies to date to show the effects of the ketogenic diet treating and reversing type 2 diabetes, but also reversing cardiovascular disease biomarkers and fatty liver disease. The next episode I'd like to reintroduce is episode 113, Thomas Seyfried may have just cured cancer. And first off the bat, I really want to admit culpability for that totally horrid link-bait title. That was some shocking malarkey of my own right there. What I should have said was that Professor Seyfried has a novel hypothesis about tumour cells that may shake up our treatment of cancer and has begun the experimental effort to test this hypothesis. I guess that long title wouldn't have worked well as a podcast title, though. The reason I chose this subject is that this particular episode intersected in three interesting ways with my biochem undergraduate degree. Firstly, it was recorded during my first semester, and while I was doing an undergraduate chemistry and biology subjects, I also was looking forward to biochemistry that would come in second year, and I decided that semester to take a brief detour into human biology and nutrition. OMG, that was the worst subject. I literally had to rote learn all the things I knew to be incorrect and parrot them off in the exam and promptly forget them. For example, one of the exam questions was, explain why it's not possible for free-living people to eat a low-carb ketogenic diet. And the answer was, if you don't have access to a respiratory gas exchange measurement, you can't know if you're running on glucose or fatty acids, because the body can make and store glucose. Another exam question is explain why dieters shouldn't choose a low-carbohydrate beer with 6% alcohol compared to a regular beer with 3% alcohol. And of course, it was all about calories in, calories out, and calories coming from ethanol. So the second time this podcast intersected with my degree, I always re-listen to podcasts, and I really re-listened to this podcast right after I did that exam to wash the malarkey of that exam off. Anyway, after the semester was over, I ran into the lecturer and I asked him what my respiratory quotient of 0.68 meant. He gave me this weird look and said, that's impossible. If you burn only glucose, your RQ is 1.0. If you burn only fatty acids, your RQ is 7. I suggested he look into the stoichiometry of ketone oxidation. Anyway, the third time this episode intersected with my degree was in honours. I was studying the biophysical properties of the inner mitochondrial membrane in response to dietary fatty acids, and I needed to get a baseline of the constituent cardiolipin phospholipids in a mouse liver mitochondria. And I found a paper describing some of that information. To my surprise, the principal investigator was Thomas Seyfried, and I contacted him and he was very helpful, and he introduced me to some of the world's best mitochondrial membrane experts. Anyway, I'm working on documenting my study right now for a peer-reviewed publication, and I'm happy to say that I can cite the previous work of Thomas Seyfried in my thesis. Anyway, on to the show. Hope you enjoy it. Thanks.
Welcome back to Two Keto Dudes. This is Carl Franklin from Connecticut in the United States. And in February 2016, I put myself on a ketogenic diet to take control of my metabolism. In just 2.5 months, I managed to reverse all my markers of type 2 diabetes with diet alone. As of now, I'm 80 pounds lighter with no signs of diabetes or heart disease.
Hi, I'm Richard Morris, back in Canberra, Australia again, and I've been on a ketogenic diet since April of 2014. And when I started, I was very sick with complications from type 2 diabetes. Within 6 months of starting a ketogenic diet, all of my biomarkers of disease had disappeared. I've lost about 100 pounds, and I've completely turned my health around.
Look, we speak about how much weight we've lost, and sure, that's a thing you can easily see on the surface about how much we've changed about our lives. And it's true that losing respectively 80 and 100 pounds and keeping it off respectively 2 and 4 years is such an unusual achievement to be virtually impossible if you follow conventional wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
We have done the virtually impossible, lost a lot of weight, and kept it off.
But weight may be the least important measurement of how our lives have changed.
Yeah.
We've both reversed our type 2 diabetes. We've come off medications. And the common advice is that type 2 diabetes is a progressive disease. Once you have it, it only gets worse. 4 years ago, I was heavily diabetic and in danger of losing a toe. Today, I'm normal, non-diabetic, healthy, and fitter than I've ever been.
And this show is a document of our experiences thriving for years in ketosis.
And saving toes.
And hopefully that might help a few people who are curious about this kind of dietary hacking.
Yeah, we're not doctors. We don't want to give anyone any medical advice, but we are keen to share our own experiences. We're actually both software developers, so we're not afraid of a little technical detail, are we, Carl?
Know-how.
We have done some research into our own deranged metabolisms and the science behind that. We hope to share some of that research. Where possible, we intend to put links in the show notes to cite research supporting any claims that we make.
You'll probably work out pretty quickly that we're both foodies.
Oh, yeah.
We love to cook, and we love to eat.
Yep.
In every episode, we both share a keto recipe that cannot, will not, and shall not be ignored.
It shall not, no.
So let's start podcast number 113. Thomas Seyfried may have just cured cancer. Heard you say you're due for a little. So, Richard, do we have any apologies or corrections from last week's show?
Yeah, last week's show was 112, Jessica Turton, scientist and dietitian.
Right.
There is one errata. I forgot to put any links in the show notes, so I missed a link to her study that she did and to the recipes that we did. So I shall fix those up, and my apologies.
Well, by the time you're listening to this, those have been fixed, so go get them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, let's revisit what a ketogenic diet is.
A ketogenic diet is a diet where you don't eat any sugar or starch. Simple as that. You get all of your energy from fat. It's either fat on your body, that's right, or it's fat on your plate. And we just get a minimum amount of protein, the amount of protein that we need to maintain our lean muscle mass, and all of our energy, it's all from fat.
Yep, that's right. So how was your week, my friend?
I had a fascinating week. So I started the week in New London, Connecticut.
Yeah.
Doing a keto minifest.
Yeah.
Then we went to Nina Teichol's place in New York and played with her puppy Scamp while she did a recording for another podcast.
Yeah.
And after that, I flew back to Australia and almost an hour after I got off the plane, I was in a massive last-minute tutorial for my mid-semester exams.
Whoa.
I know, right? And with jet lag and everything. And then the next day we went to an auction. We bought a house.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So we've had a big week. I've got my mid-semester exams next week, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So I'm going to be a little bit scarce for a while.
Wow.
So I can predict what my next week is going to be. It's going to be lots of revision and lots of panic. So that was my week. How was yours?
Well, it was great. Of course, you brought up the Keto Minifest. We did this together in New London at what was the Spark Makerspace last year at Keto Fest, the kitchen. And this year, it's got a new name and a new owner. It's RD86, and Chef Robert Ramsey is the owner, proprietor. And we basically did a meetup, the New London Ketogenic Meetup Group. This is something that I started. And now it's got over 250 members.
Nice.
Yep. And I just decided to do to host our own sort of mini Keto Fest, and you agreed. And man, it was great. You made I'll let you tell everybody what you made.
So I did salmon in a bag with salmon skin bacon and a fennel salad. And I did some chocolates, but they were a bit of a failure. I bought some lemon myrtle essence, which is a very potent limonene essence, similar to the same lemon flavor that you get in lemongrass. I only needed to use 1 drop. I used 10, so it was really quite powerful. The problem was I was making the chocolate in a bag, so I couldn't taste test my mixtures beforehand, and I was using a new bottle of lemon essence, this lemon myrtle essence, which was an unknown factor. So it's one of these things you get better at it the second time you do it.
I thought it was hilarious, Chef Robert's reaction to. He's like, "Wait a minute, this is the worst thing I've ever eaten, and yet I can't stop eating it."
I know,
it's
right?
It's like the flavor is here, and then it's over here. This is really weird.
Yeah. And it also used allulose, and I also wasn't experienced with dosing of allulose, and so I probably should have been a little bit more sweet. And so he was reacting to both the really strong lemon essence flavor, but also the fact that the sugar doesn't come at you like regular sugar.
No, it doesn't.
So
I think it actually, you taste it on the sides of your tongue. I don't think you get it where the sugar is. That's what's weird about allulose.
Yeah, so that was compounding to Robert's experience. And I'm like, dude, I'm standing right here. This is the worst thing you've ever tasted, and you're a professional chef. Stop eating it, quick.
However, he really did love everything else that we made, the salmon, and, we knocked it out of the park. I made beef short ribs, braised short ribs.
Yeah.
And what was interesting is I wanted to do my cauliflower mash, right?
Right.
And he was like, oh, no, let's elevate this a little bit. And so he had me take cauliflower and slice it into steaks,
right?
Or pieces, roast those. And I chose to do that with a little olive oil on the bottom of the pan, but nothing on the top except a little turmeric, salt, and pepper.
Yeah, it's a real dry roast, yeah.
Yeah, so it was soft on the bottom and kind of crunchy or crispy anyway, and brown on the top. And then I made a smoked Gouda cheese sauce using trisodium citrate and put that over that. And then what he thought would be a good idea was to chop some leeks really fine.
Right.
Into strips. And actually, Brenda Zorn's friend, Liz Myers, came down, took a 4-hour ride to come down here, and she ended up doing the leek cutting, and she cut those things so thin and so nice. Her knife skills were great. And then he fried them. So they were kind of like the crispy fried onions that you get on top of your ribeye at a really nice restaurant,
Yeah, the garnish.
But they were delicious. They were like little onion rings. And then, of course, I made Kim Howerton's recipe for keto eclairs, and they were just great too. So everybody had a good time. But the highlight of Keto Minifest really was Megan Ramos coming on Skype. Actually, we used Zoom. Yeah. But for like an hour, she answered questions from the audience, and that was great.
Yeah. It's very generous. For us, it was really a test of the facilities for Keto Fest, because this was a new restaurant we'd never cooked in before, although we had cooked in it last year when it was in the configuration of the Spark Makerspace. There was no longer the woodshed in the back, and there was no longer all of the 3D printing electronic workshops, and so it really was an entirely different kitchen with entirely different set of people running it. And I tell you, the difference was chalk and cheese. Oh, yeah. Robert and his team supported us like we'd never been supported before. It was like a perfect safety net. We were able to do some remarkable stuff, and I'm looking forward to the big Keto Fest in July 21. That's going to be off the hook.
Well, I also scheduled another Keto Mini Fest in New London for May 26th, Saturday, May 26th. So if you want to check that out, if you're in the area, go to minifest.2keto.com.
Yeah.
There's more to my week, though, because we started doing live streaming this week.
Oh, yes, we did.
Yeah. I figured out a technology to be able to stream simultaneously to YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch, which is owned by Amazon. And so I've been doing that almost daily since we figured out how to do it.
Yeah, and something that we want to do for our Patreons, right? Among other things.
Yeah, not just our Patreons, but anybody, right? I mean, I plan to go down to RD86 and do some stuff in the test kitchen with Robert and stream that live.
Nice.
Another thing we did this week was put up the Keto Fest website,
right? The
Eventbrite site where we're selling tickets. So the Kickstarter is over. We were successful. Now we're selling tickets to the general public, of course. Yeah,
the prices went up a little bit, but
price has gone up a bit, but we have to give something to the Kickstarter people, and it's just ketofest.com. Just type that in; it maps over there now.
Nice.
There is one more thing that I need to say. I was hired by Dr. Ken Berry, who's now my doctor, to read the audible version of his book, Lies My Doctor Told Me.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And you'll do a really good job at that. You've got a good voice for radio.
Yeah, I do. I've heard that. And and he's really happy about it. I've already done the prologue in 2 chapters, and it should be done fairly soon. So
nice.
Look for that. I'm very excited about it. All right, well, let's give away some swag. And you know what? We're not giving away a coffee mug today.
No?
No. We're giving away a signed copy of Lies My Doctor Told Me by Dr. Ken Berry.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And we picked one lucky member of the 2 Keto Dudes fan club to win today. And the fan club is essentially easy to join. You go to fanclub.2keto.com. You answer a few quick questions, and you give us your email address, and you're in the running. So we picked a name at random today to win this book.
Yeah. Who's our winner for today?
Well, her first name is Harpa, but I don't think I can pronounce her last name.
Do you want me to have a crack at it?
Yeah, sure.
So there's Harpa Gudjonsdottir, which is clearly an Icelandic name.
Okay. Gudjonsdottir?
Gudjonsdottir.
I was just going to call her Harpa G.
Yeah, that works too. Congratulations, Harpa.
Congratulations, Harpa. And Dr. Barry will be sending that to you. Toot sweet.
And if you don't want to wait to win some swag, you can buy all sorts of it online at gear.2keto.com.
Yes, you can. All right, it's time to read some, what is it? Oh, yeah.
I might just put a new letterbox.
Mail.
Carl always has to get the last word in. Mail.
I have to get the last. Okay, you got it. You got it today, my friend. Mail. No, sorry. All right, I'll go first. This is a 5-star review on iTunes, which is also called Apple Podcasts now.
Yeah, thank you for every one of those stars. Much appreciated.
Absolutely. And the title of this is Life Changing.
Oh.
I started keto November 14th, 2017. Today's April 7th, 2018. Thus far, I've lost 80 pounds and feel amazing.
Wow.
Carl and Richard have kept me company and given me the support and science I needed. I can't say enough about the impact of this podcast, and it's fun and entertaining, too. If I were to rate podcasts by positive impact, this is the one at the top of the list. I love this podcast enough to support it financially. Enough said.
Oh, thank you very much.
Wow.
This is a common story that we hear. People, in 5 months' time, you lose 80 pounds and you feel great. This is pretty much what happened to me. I lost 80 pounds in the first 5 months, and then it took me about 3 years to lose another 20 pounds. So, thank you very much for offering to support us. If you want to do that, go to patreon.2keto.com.
Yeah, I also want to mention that since I started doing these live streams, and I've done 2 or 3 of them now, I like to ask people, what are your experiences? And man, it's just like one after another, 40 pounds, 50 pounds, 80 pounds, 100 pounds, and in very short amount of time, 100 pounds in a year,
Yeah, and that's virtually impossible, remember?
Yep, that's what they say. All right, what you got?
So I've got one from the forum. This is from Eliaconia, and Eliaconia says, it's nearly 1 a.m. and my energy is so high. I'm so happy right now because for the first time in a long time, I'm in no pain.
Wow.
I had enough energy to clean and do laundry without feeling totally wiped out and exhausted. I even walked a longer distance from my car to a store without difficulty breathing. This is a major for me. And I have nowhere to share it with anyone, so I thought I could post it here on the forum. I was at a birthday party last night, and there was a cake right there, and I wasn't even desiring or craving it. It didn't even faze me.
That's
I ate
great.
my greens and my protein, and I socialized. I was so upbeat and happy and chatty. It was like the old me had surfaced, the one who lights up a room because I had that special something. I have been intermittent fasting for a week, and I'm totally new at this, and tomorrow and Saturday, I'm fasting until Sunday morning. Just to feel like myself again and have so much energy is such a win for me. To be fully present and engaging with my friends and my children, and to feel normal again, to feel sassy. To me, that is a really good result. I have no clue if I lost or gained because I felt relief that I figured out what's going on with me. And there's a way to heal and reverse illness without medication.
Yeah.
This energy is insane. I hope I can get to sleep. That's how awake I am. Anyway, I hope this is okay to post because I'm new to posting on this type of forum. Look, all I got to say is just bring the sassy. Yeah. Come to the forum and bring the sassy.
Yeah, that's right. Well done. Well done. Okay, well, we have an interview with Thomas Seyfried that we recorded a couple of weeks ago, or maybe it was about a week and a half ago.
Yeah.
When I went to Boston.
Yep. And I was in Australia.
Yeah, and you were in Australia. And so I actually went to Professor Seyfried's office at Boston College, and we sat down, we set up all the stuff, and we had a great great talk about cancer and ketogenic diet. So here it is. Well, I'm here at Boston College with none other than Professor Thomas Seyfried. Thanks for being on our show.
Oh, thank you. It's nice to be here.
It's an honor for us.
I just want to say first off the bat that when I was first looking into a ketogenic diet for my own type 2 diabetes, I came upon some of your YouTube presentations, and they were fascinating. They weren't what I was interested in. I was interested in diabetes, and they were all about cancer and about a novel explanation for how we get cancer and how we can put pressure on it to try and help our body get rid of it. But I found them fascinating, and I always intended one day to get back into it and understand a little bit more about it. And I just wanted to thank you for putting those out there and providing a fascinating interlude. Can you tell us a little bit about your theory?
That cancer is a mitochondrial metabolic disease?
Yeah.
Well, that theory started with Otto Warburg back in the 1920s when he deduced that the high production of lactic acid in a variety of cancer cells was the result of a disruption of oxidative phosphorylation.
Right.
He had very powerful and convincing evidence from many experiments to suggest that this OXPHOS, ability to respire in the presence of air, oxygen, was defective. Because, Louis Pasteur, with his work on yeast, showed that the yeasts will ferment in the absence of oxygen.
Sure. When
oxygen comes into the environment, the yeast stops fermenting and begins to respire. Yeast are a very flexible organism.
Right.
We can't, as a species, we and mammals can't do that. We can't just go and hibernate in a fermentation metabolism for very long. But it turns out that the cancer cell is able to ferment, but is incapable of respiring oxygen when put back into the oxygen. So this is been referred to as the Warburg effect by others, not Otto. Otto never said this is my effect.
The me effect.
He never said. Yeah. It was Ephraim Racker at Cornell University who defined this as the Warburg effect, which is the continual production of lactic acid in the presence of oxygen. This had been a common phenomenon across all cancers of various species, even plants. Even
really?
The plants. The plant can't metastasize, but that's because they don't have an immune system.
Right.
And I have, in my writings with my colleagues, have said that metastatic cancer is actually a macrophage. It's a energy destabilization in cells of our immune system.
Right.
So if plants can have a growth, they call it crown gall disease. It has all of the metabolism that Otto Warburg would describe in cancer cells, but they don't metastasize. And plants don't have an immune system, so you're not going to get metastasis.
Yeah.
But when you have that same defect occurring in macrophages, you get metastatic potential. So you don't have to invent a whole bunch of new genes and all that. That's all nonsense.
Right.
So, but anyway, getting back to Warburg, well, things got confusing because many people said that cancer cells continue to take up oxygen despite the fact that they ferment.
Right.
So they were led to believe that the cells are both respiring and fermenting at the same time. And, this doesn't make any sense to me. Anybody who understands some basic biochemistry of different organisms, it makes no sense. Yet it became the persistent view because if Warburg were in fact correct, then, most of what we're doing in the cancer field makes no sense anyway. So Warburg obviously could not be correct. It was because the field said he couldn't be correct.
Right. This is the Nobel Prize winning Otto Warburg. Clearly could not be correct.
But he didn't get the Nobel Prize for his work in cancer.
Right.
Even he might have been nominated, but he got it for the cytochrome oxidase, the key enzyme involved in respiration, by the way.
Sure.
But I think that his sternness and rigidity about what he felt was the origin of the disease was swept away with the findings that you have gene mutations in cancer.
Yeah.
And that became the new phenom back in the 1950s and 60s. And it was like an addiction. people just forgot about everything else and ran after all these genes.
Well, it's also a sort of an endless mystery that we could spend decades and years and, lifetimes figuring out and spend billions of dollars getting to the bottom of, isn't it? I mean, it's like the ultimate puzzle.
Yeah, well,
genes.
At first, everybody was swept away, but because it seemed logical.
Yeah.
It seemed like maybe these mutations are in fact causing cancer.
Right.
Because that years ago, Theodore Boveri claimed that cancer was a disorder of chromosomal imbalances. That was back in the early 1900s. Yet his friend Hammerschlag, I believe that's his name, Hammerschman or something, one of these names, who showed him the chromosomes, felt that the chromosome abnormalities were coming from something else. They weren't the origin of the disease. They were an effect of cancer. But Boveri said no. And Boveri never looked at a tumor preparation. This is amazing. Yeah. So he was a very famous guy. He proved that Mendel's genes were actually on chromosomes.
Right.
Which was a massive achievement back then.
Yes.
And then, of course, chromosomes are abnormal in cancer. Nobody denies this. Most cancer, not all, have chromosome defects.
Yeah.
I believe Duesberg and his colleagues at Berkeley believes that this chromosomal instability is the origin of cancer. I look at all this stuff as downstream epiphenomena. It's an effect, not the cause.
Right.
And but Warburg was pretty much thrown under the bus. Everybody ran off and thought the gene thing was the really big, in me, I could care less what it was at the time. You study in the textbook that it's a genetic disease and, you just do this so you can get a grade in your genetics exam. It's not really something that impacts you.
Yeah.
Other than to get a grade.
I'm actually doing my first genetics exam in 2 weeks' time. Surprisingly enough, I decided to go back to university and do biochemistry at the ripe young age of 52 years.
Yeah, Carl was just telling me that's commendable. That's commendable.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So a lot of people think that, and I hear this all the time, that if you just starve the cancer cells of glucose, they just shrivel up and die. But it's more complex than that, right?
It's a little more complex. It's not a big, they use glutamine also. So this was the issue. Besides glucose, the tumor cells will also use glutamine.
Okay. And
the glutamine is also fermented, which is interesting.
Really?
Yes. So it's amino acid fermentation.
Right.
And Hokachka, years ago, took aquatic animals and held them underwater. And now you can't do these kinds of experiments today, but he did this back in early 70s. And he took seals and turtles and a dolphin or these porpoise or something like this. He would strap them to a board and hold them underwater. And of course, they were adapted to live underwater, but not when somebody's holding them under there.
Yeah.
But what he noticed was the tremendous amount of lactic acid and succinic acid was pouring into the bloodstream of these animals that were held underwater. Now, of course, the animals didn't die; they were not drowned. They were just held under there to see, what are the metabolites that are changing. And succinic acid is a waste product of amino acid fermentation.
Wow.
And we know that cancer cells are also blowing out succinic acid.
Right.
It stabilizes HIF, which is an oncogene for allowing hypoxic inducible factor. In other words, when you stop breathing, you better start fermenting. And what HIF is a transcription factor that upregulates glucose import into so cells can ferment. And so basically what these aquatic animals were doing was they were adapted to ferment. Yeah. And what they fermented was glucose and glutamine.
Fascinating.
And if you go back in the history of the Earth before oxygen came on the planet, all living organisms at that time were fermenters. Obviously, there's no oxygen.
Had to be.
Right.
Yeah.
So they fermented amino acids and any carb that you could, different types of carbs. So they were able to survive. And they could survive as long as they had fermentable fuels in the microenvironment. And as soon as the fermentable fuels disappeared, they died.
Right.
So unbridled proliferation as long as the fuel for fermentation were present.
Right.
So does that suggest that cancer is a very ancient
Cancer
kind of...
is the pathways that cancer is the cancer cells. All cancers are exactly the same disease. They're all the same. They do exactly the same thing. So they all ferment.
Yeah.
And they will ferment either glucose or glutamine or both.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
So ketogenic diets handle one part of the problem. They'll reduce the glucose. And people respond remarkably well. But you'll say, the tumors can sometimes come back after a while. And people say, oh, yeah, they're adapting. You see how tough they are. They're starting to ferment glutamine. They're going for the glutamine.
Yeah.
I don't know of any tumor cell that can survive without glucose and glutamine.
Yeah.
Checkmate.
So how do you depress glutamine?
How do you do that?
Oh, not easy. Okay. Well, it's a little, you got to be a little crafty. You have to be a little strategic.
Yeah.
Because the cells of our immune system also use glutamine as a major fuel. And this was shown by the Newscombs in UK. And they were spent years and years studying what macrophages and immune cells fuel they would use. So basically, if you kill a lot of cancer cells, your immune system somebody has to come in and pick up the corpses.
Right.
Otherwise, you get rot and infection and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
So that's our immune system.
Sure.
So if you go after glutamine too hard, then you paralyze our ability of the immune system to pick up the corpses.
Right.
So what we do is the press pulse, and that's one of our big papers that came out last year with some of my physician friends and scientists. And that's where we press with the diet. And I don't like it's called ketogenic metabolic therapy is what we call it.
Right.
Absolutely.
And what it does is the ketones are only to protect normal cells. They're not going to be killing tumor cells in a large amount.
Right.
All right. So the ketones are only to allow our normal cells to transition over to a non-glucose fuel.
Yeah, and have adequate energy.
Yeah, they're fine under ketones. Tumor cells can't use the ketone for energy because their respiration is defective, just like Otto Warburg said.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Not a mystery. And everybody said, oh, but the cancer cells are taking in oxygen. Well, not when they're living in a hypoxic environment in vivo. I mean, they're not taking in any oxygen.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but they seem to ignore that fact. And no one, save us, were the first ones to identify and suggest that it's the glutamine being fermented, not respired.
Yeah.
It's being fermented. And we have a paper that just came out. It's in BBA that shows that how this happens in the mitochondria.
Right.
It's a mitochondrial phenomenon. And the mitochondria, and this is another thing. You look at a cancer mitochondria and you say, oh, he's taking up oxygen and he's throwing out a lot of ATP. Therefore, Warburg is wrong.
Right.
Right? Oh, no.
So what's happening?
Yeah, they're fermenting it. They're not using oxidative phosphorylation.
So even though the mitochondria is damaged, they're able to ferment glutamine in the mitochondria.
And generate massive amount of ATP.
Right.
Everything is bioenergetic. Without ATP, nothing lives.
Right.
Yep.
It's so simple. You don't make ATP, you die.
That's death. Yep.
All right. Where are you getting the energy to make ATP? Right? I can't breathe. I have to ferment. What do you ferment? Glucose and glutamine. And the fuels have to be so abundant in the microenvironment. So you have to have a pile of this stuff.
Yeah.
Because they'll run through it. It's an inefficient system, so you better have a lot of stockpile of the fermentable fuel. Now, of course, they can ferment other things. The problem is there's not enough. They go through that in 15 minutes. That other stuff is gone. So you have to have a pile of fermentable fuel in the microenvironment to fuel the beast.
Yeah.
Now, it's not enough to lower protein intake to lower glutamine?
It's indirect. The best thing we found are drugs. But you got to pulse them. Bing! You can't press the drug.
Yeah.
You got to give them a short burst while closing the front door on the glucose. You got to hold the glucose door shut, and you got to pulse the glutamine door. Bing! You degrade the tumor gradually because if you go after it too, you get tumor lysis syndrome, and you could die from So we don't. And this is what's killing some of the people on the immunotherapies.
Okay.
Some of those if everybody has the same epitope on their tumor cells, they kill them all, and the patient dies from one of these tumor lysis conditions. So if you don't die from other things that the immunotherapy does to you, So we're developing a therapy that's basically non-toxic. cost effective, and that's the single biggest drawback about our therapy. It's cost effective.
Yeah, that's a shame.
That is a drawback.
So that's going to go over like a lead balloon, right?
They want to make money out of it.
Then we have to speak of morality. Is it moral to be charging sick people a lot of money? Nobody's talking about the morality issue in this cancer thing.
True.
Right. This is it's immoral to charge people massive amounts of money and provide nothing, very little, and put them at risk for all kinds of diseases.
It's like millions of dollars in the last 6 months of your life. It's incredible how much this ramps up.
Yes.
Healthcare.
It's a moral question as far as if you have something. And you'd be surprised how angry people become when you tell them you have a cost-effective therapy for cancer. That doesn't hurt you.
How dare you?
Right.
It's almost like you blaspheme against the religion.
So is this a therapy that would be done in isolation or in conjunction with like chemotherapy and radiotherapy and other therapies?
I guess we have to say that. So as not to piss off the entire worldwide cancer industry,
right?
Oh yeah, you can do it with radiation, but
minimal effective dose.
Yeah, but why would you? Here's the bigger issue: why would you want to use radiation and chemo? What's the purpose of radiation and chemo?
Right,
to kill the cancer cell, right?
Kill everything.
Yes. Well, so if I can kill it by just depriving it of its fuel, why would we want to do anything else?
Right.
Yeah. Right.
Now that's dangerous.
But it's also selective as well. I mean, radiotherapy and chemotherapy are not particularly selective. I mean, this is a very selective thing to the tumor, right?
Yeah, very selective. And it's so selective that you don't harm the rest of the body.
Incredible.
So, and it's very simple. When people come to realize how mindless this cancer is, how incredibly misinformed we were as a species, right? It's going to be a shock. It's going to be, but you can't. The human brain can't. Who understands this more is the lay people on the street. They seem to understand what's going on. The scientists are out to lunch. They just simply can't. And I think it's their meal ticket. Basically, you're touching their meal ticket.
Yeah.
But it's also that everyone's I mean, we know of reproduction as being essentially a genetic issue. So we think of growth and propagation as being a genetic caused genetically, and so it's kind of makes sense in a funny kind of way. The same way that the calories in, calories out model was seen as the obvious answer to the obesity crisis,
Yeah.
But it requires a little bit of understanding, I think.
Yeah, well, look at the cell unbridled proliferation, right? That's basically what the nature of cancer is, unbridled. So the cell has to have energy to go through the cell cycle.
Sure.
You need to synthesize proteins and lipids and all these kinds of things. But the carbons from glucose and glutamine are the fuel that does all this.
Right. Do you know of any effect that chronic high insulin has on cancer? Because insulin is sort of a growth factor. And
insulin. We're exploring this now. It's very hard. It's hard to get funding for this. Can you believe it?
Really?
No, you can't believe it.
No.
They always say the first thing they say, what gene is involved? There's no gene is involved. They want to know what gene, what mutation do you think is responsible for this? And I said, all of them or none of them.
Yeah.
It's not. It's largely an irrelevant question. If it's not a genetic disease, why are you getting all excited about this? Again, what do they eat, and why do they eat what they have to? If they can't respire, they must ferment. What do they ferment? They ferment glucose and glutamine. Can they ferment other things? Yes, they can. Are they there in sufficient quantity in the microenvironment to fuel them? No. What could give us more fermentable fuel? Radiation and chemo. Why don't we give them radiation and chemo? This is how insane it is.
Right.
So you ask me, we have to treat the patients, the ones that we've published, with radiation and chemo, because the poor physician will lose his license if he doesn't poison and irradiate the person.
Right.
So, and I asked him flat out, what would happen if we didn't do this? He said the patients would be even healthier.
So do they really have to give these patients the least possible dose that doesn't lose them their medical license?
Yes. In
Incredible.
fact, as a matter of fact, we're doing that in Turkey now. We give them the lowest possible dose, only to stay within compliance. But I asked them, I said, what happens if we don't give them any chemo? They'll do better. It only makes sense. I could take a healthy person walking down the street, a young man, 21 years old, fit as a fiddle, and start giving him chemo and radiation. And, the poor guy will be in the hospital, sick as a dog. All his hair will be falling out. And then you take a cancer patient, you do that to them? What is going on here? This is nuts.
It's ridiculous.
But the problem is that it's tragic. It's a tragedy. It's not funny. It's a tragedy.
Nah,
it's a tragedy because the physicians themselves are not educated to know any of this.
Right.
Okay. And they're not trained in medical school. They still memorize signaling cascades of mTOR and all these mutations, BRAF and BRCA and all this kind of stuff. And, most of it's irrelevant. They go to oncology school to learn not to give dosage of chemo that's going to bring the patient to a near-death experience and then back off. And, they're not trained to use metabolic therapy.
Yeah, we have the same problem with diabetes experts. I mean, it's the same problem. And funnily enough, it's almost the same solution. It's almost embarrassing how many things the ketogenic diet has actually turned out to be appropriate for.
Can I ask you, let's bring this down to the man on the street. There's so many people, you've got cancer, what do you do next? And for most people, this is such a new idea, it's a simple idea, but it's a new idea. What do you tell these people? How, I just got diagnosed with cancer. Do I just go on a ketogenic diet? Do I fast? What do I do?
Another tragedy is they don't have a professional, a knowledgeable person to help them.
Yeah.
So the first thing they do is they go to the top oncology, Dana-Farber, MD Anderson, anywhere, all over the world. You all have your key cancer places, and they'll give you what the field says to give you, and then they'll tell you that the ketogenic diet, metabolic therapy, hasn't been validated or proven. Mainly because they don't read the literature, and they're clueless as to the massive scientific evidence that supports what we're saying.
Right.
Because they never heard it in medical schools. If they didn't hear it in medical school, it can't exist.
Didn't exist, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't exist. So the poor guy who gets diagnosed with cancer is then going to a professional who's clueless or understands nothing or very little about this whole thing. And then they say, well, we're trained to give you chemo and radiation or immunotherapy or some such thing. And therefore you go and you experience this. And many times your tumor will regress. Of course, you might have significant adverse effects from the treatment.
Sure.
But, many people survive. Let's be honest. There's many survivors. Many of these people are being treated for less than some of these cancers are very early stage. So, you're taking a baseball bat to a fly, so, but then you put yourself at risk. It's not healthy to be dosed with toxic poisons and irradiated. And even with immunotherapies, you can get type 1 and type 1 diabetes. You can have massive organ failures and all that. Why would you even consider treating anybody with the remote possibility of making that person sick or even die?
Yeah.
And they say there's nothing else out there. What do you mean there's nothing else out there? It's ketogenic metabolic therapy.
So tell us about the literature. Tell us about what studies, what clinical evidence there is that these kinds of things can show benefit.
Yeah, well, I think the group in Hungary, Kazbatoth and Sophia Clemens, they're showing with their paleo. We just published a paper. It just came out this week. On glioblastoma out of Alexandria, Egypt. This guy is doing well. The paper got 10,000 hits in 2 days.
Wow.
So why? The guy is a corn farmer. He's back working in the fields. He's 25 months out of a GBM. And we did upfront metabolic. Yeah, we had to use radiation and chemo, but we pushed it back. We did it was the last thing. And he's been still on the metabolic therapy. He's doing fine. Why should he be, And then we have a lot of guys like Pablo Kelly. Oh, Pablo's not published. They say Pablo, it's not in but he's all over the web.
Yeah.
He was diagnosed with a glioblastoma. He chose no radiation, no chemo. And I just talked to him. He's still doing fine.
Andrew Scarborough also.
Scarborough. But you see, those people do not exist.
Right.
They are anecdotal. So I said, how many anecdotal reports do we need? Do you want to live? If you go I mean, people aren't that stupid,
really, but
right?
Right.
This is not type 2 diabetes where you're not going to drop dead tomorrow.
Yeah.
You're not going. You don't have. If you have type 2, oh, I'm sorry, you have 6 months to live.
It's not. No.
I mean, give me a break.
That kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but with glioblastoma, if you can make a year or a year and a half, you're doing really well.
So there are people that we know that have walked away from stage 4.
Oh yeah.
Cancer.
My colleagues in Turkey only treat stage 4. They and that's that woman with the triple negative breast cancer. She's doing fine. I just talked to my colleagues. So we have stage 4 pancreatic cancer, metastasis to all the bones, the femurs, the ulna, the rays in the face, every organ system. The guy looked like a skeleton with a PET scan all over him. You can see his whole. So he's doing fine. He's out 2 years, right?
Wow.
We have lung cancer, ovarian cancer, triple negative breast cancer. We have glioblastoma. I mean, what do you want? I mean, is there a tumor out there that can resist this? Now, I'm not saying these people are cured, because sometimes they come to these clinics, and I talk to my friends. They're the ones running the clinics. Sometimes they're so beat up by the radiation and the chemo and the immunotherapy, whatever the hell they're giving them.
Yeah.
Their body just can't rally. But if you take a person who's just been freshly diagnosed, their bodies are generally pretty healthy at first. Yeah. They don't look like death warmed over like you see them after they're finished, with the radiation and chemo. So you want, and they give you high dose steroids that are the worst thing. You should never do that to these people.
Yeah.
Now, what are the drugs? I mean, we can obviously reduce our glucose by not eating it, but what are the drugs that you're talking about for glutamine?
For glutamine, right now we have the experimental drug DON, 6-azonoreleucine. It's a drug that was used years ago for cancer patients. We have a big study that we're doing now. It works amazingly well for brain cancer. In the preclinical system, it hasn't been used for brain cancer in humans yet, but it works on metastatic cancer, especially when used with ketogenic metabolic therapy.
So this is the ketogenic diet is the press, and the pulse is this this glutathione.
Yes. And I have a beautiful paper that's out with my colleagues on the press pulse, the whole concept, the framework for how you, and getting back to the problem is people can't do this on their own.
Right.
And they go to the medical schools and they expect to have someone, and the guy said, well, none of that works. It hasn't been done by a clinical trial. So then we'll give you, what we think works.
But
so
they'll give you an experimental drug option that hasn't only been done on mice, and most people are so desperate they'll do that.
You want a drug. If you tell them, I want a drug that's not going to hurt me at all, I don't want to get hurt by this. I want it to be powerfully therapeutic, and I want to be able to be alive in about a year and a half or 2 with my hair.
Yeah.
Okay.
They'll be told it doesn't exist.
Yeah. Well, it does. It's called ketogenic metabolic therapy, and it exists.
There you go. So what we're going to do for people who are listening, if they are in this situation, and it's a horrible situation to be in, you're just newly diagnosed, we're going to put on our show notes as many of the papers as Professor Seyfried spoke about, and we're going to suggest that you print them out and take them to your oncologist and ask him or her if they have read that literature, and get them across that literature, because that may give you an opportunity to be referred to somebody who can help. That's the only thing I can suggest.
I think that's what I do. I generally give them our papers and say, if you can find an oncologist who is willing who's willing to do this, follow our procedures that we've done, which are actually the procedures that were developed by myself, the group in Turkey, and the group in Egypt, and the group in Hungary, and more groups. And I just came back from China, where they're going to dovetail ketogenic metabolic therapy in with their traditional Chinese medicine.
Right.
So it's spreading around the world. I mean, people. But that's the tragedy. In fact, I just had an email today from some woman in Australia with a low grade tumor, whose physician said there's no evidence to support that ketogenic metabolic therapy works,
and yet it's safe. And
but there's papers that show that it works.
Yeah,
they just haven't read them.
Why would a doctor dissuade anybody from trying anything that's safe?
Yeah. Well, they say it's really weird, because they think the radiation and chemo, which is palliative, it's not curative.
Right.
Why would you go? And I have published a paper showing that radiation, chemo, and the standard of care for glioblastoma is largely responsible for the demise of the majority of the people that are treated. It's not. It's the therapy that's causing the recurrence of this tumor.
Yeah.
And they ignore it completely.
Okay, I got to get back to this glutamine suppressor drug because obviously people are going to want to know about that.
Yeah.
Is that available?
No, it's hard to get. It's hard to get.
And is there anything else?
Yeah, the other thing we used in the paper we just published, we used chloroquine and we used EGCG, the green tea extract.
Yeah.
And both of those have a tendency to hit the glutamine a little bit.
Chloroquine's the malaria drug, right?
Yeah, it is. It stops autophagy, so you can't get the glutamine out of the lysosome.
Right. Yeah.
So it's an indirect tweak of the glutamine issue.
So what about fasting? I mean, you said autophagy is a kind of a therapy.
See what happens sometimes, as I said, the most invasive cell of all cancer is the macrophage that's now become corrupted metabolically.
Right.
And those cells have they're the most versatile cell, one of the most versatile cells in our body. I mean, those cells are wound healers. You get a bacterial infection, their job is to kill the bacteria. Yeah. So they can plow into a contused area where there's no blood vessels, and they can kill bacteria. They can help heal the wound. They can do a lot of different things, and that's the metastatic cell. So when you take away its fuels, it starts eating the microenvironment and getting the fuel from the microenvironment by phagocytosis.
Yeah.
Or they want to call it, once the cell engulfs, then it goes to the lysosome, and then they call that autophagy. Yeah. But basically, you're degrading material inside the lysosome, and then you can send glucose and glutamine out of the lysosome back into the cell from internal sources, right?
Yeah.
So what we do is we put chloroquine in there, neutralizes the acidity in the lysosome, and they can't digest what they just ate.
Right.
So they choke to death on their food, on their last meal.
Right.
So this is wonderful. It's so beautiful to kill cancer because they're dumbass cells.
Yeah.
And if you have a few functional brain cells, you'll know easy how to kill these things. The problem is you got to put all these people through all this terrible stuff because the people treating the patients don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And
so I hate to say that. It sounds horrible, but it's, why would you do that?
But they also can't really admit to themselves that the treatment that they've learned and that they're applying is doing danger to people. I mean, there's a cognitive dissonance involved with.
What do you mean? Just take a normal guy and do that to them and see what the guy looks like. What are you talking about?
Good point.
I mean, it doesn't take many. Does my therapy hurt anybody? I don't grab that guy over there. Let's nuke and poison him and see how he feels.
Let's have a control.
Control experiment. How many volunteers?
I seriously hope the cancer patients listening get the spirit of what we're talking about. It's just insane what
we're doing to these people. Yeah. So, and that's because there's a fundamental lack of knowledge on what the biology of the problem is.
Yeah.
Okay, and we've been led down a path of thinking this is a genetic disease, making hundreds of millions and billions of dollars all over the world. And the bottom line is the incidence of cancer and the death rate keeps going up over. Don't you think people would stop if you're doing the same thing? People are dying. I mean, what we're doing doesn't work.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
It doesn't work. And you're putting people at risk for all kinds of other maladies by the fact that they were able to survive what you did to them. The human body is human body is so tough, man. You do all that stuff and you're still alive after you're doing that to the patient.
So on the first show we ever did about cancer, this was an interview with Mark Miller, who read your papers and Dom D'Agostino's papers and used which showed that there's a combination of the ketogenic diet and hyperbaric oxygen therapy and ketones, exogenous ketones. Yeah. The three together were the most effective at shrinking tumors. And so can you talk about those other two therapies?
Well, and the patient that we just completed in Egypt, we did hyperbaric oxygen as well. We gave him a cocktail therapy. We fasted him first with no food, just water only for 3 days, and then transitioned him to a 960 calorie ketogenic diet for 3 weeks. So then did the standard of care. Now, we know from our mouse studies, and we've published all of these things, that what I just said to you is powerfully anti-angiogenic, powerfully anti-inflammatory, and pro-apoptotic. So we're killing tumor cells while fixing up the microenvironment and building the general health of the overall organism. So now what we're doing with hyperbaric oxygen, we think we can replace radiation for the majority of cancers with hyperbaric oxygen because it creates oxidative stress and blows the tumor up. Now, blows the tumor cells up. And the radiation does the same thing. It hits small amounts of oxygen or oxygen molecules, but it blasts everything else too. I mean, it harms normal cells.
Right.
So the hyperbaric oxygen. So you have to say to yourself, this is a tumor cell that's making a lot of reactive oxygen species, but it has a very powerful antioxidant capacity. So even though it makes a lot of radicals that are breaking them, causing the mutations and the destabilization, it's not dying from its radicalization. And the issue is because the glucose and the glutamine together make glutathione, which is a powerful antioxidant.
Yeah.
And also, manganese superoxide dismutase in the mitochondria is another powerful antioxidant system, which uses glutamine as a facilitator of that enzyme.
Right.
So these two fuels, glucose and glutamine, are not only providing the carbons for growth and survival, but are also it's like the shield around the Death Star.
Yes.
You have this powerful antioxidant shield.
Yeah.
So by pulling away glucose first and then glutamine, the shield comes down, and then you put them into the hyperbaric oxygen chamber and kill them.
Yeah.
And as you said before,
and the ketones are protecting all the normal cells from the same treatment.
Right. Yeah.
And if you're in a ketogenic diet, you're creating ketones anyway, though.
There's nothing more exciting than killing tumor cells without harming the rest of the body.
Yeah.
And it's not that complicated. Once you understand the biology of what's going on, and then you know that these gene mutations that everybody is studying and here's another kicker. You're going to love this one. So all of that stuff comes downstream, right? It's largely irrelevant. So what they do is they take cancer patients now and they do punch biopsies on the breast or the prostate or some damn thing. Yeah. And then they look at the gene mutations, right? To diagnose, to make a decision about, what your predictability.
Kind of cancer they got. Yeah.
Yeah. What kind of mutations? Irrelevant. Yeah. Now, what you're doing is the punch biopsy itself is creating oncotaxis. You're creating a microenvironment that if you do have a metastatic or a cell that's on the verge, it's going to spring out into the rest of your body. So they take the core and they're going to look, oh, you're really good. Yeah. You have very low mutation. And all of a sudden, 6 months, a year later, you got metastatic cancer all over your body. What the hell happened?
The punch.
You got to give the pathologist the job, otherwise he won't have anything to do, right? He won't be able to, it's when you know what I know, right, and you see what we're doing to these cancer patients, it's a tragedy. Over and over, it's a tragedy.
Isn't it in a lot of cases that the genes in one tumor cell are different from the genes in the tumor cell next to it? They're totally different.
Yeah, totally.
So it's not a genetic cause, a common genetic cause that's causing this downstream effect. That is the genetic damage is the downstream effect of reactive oxygen species just going blindly through and slicing up genes.
And we know that we know that because the paper I published on the nuclear transfer experiments, where you take the nucleus full of mutations and put it into a new cytoplasm, it forms normal cells, even though the mutations are there, right? Yeah, I have a big paper on that. You should read it. Yeah. So, and not only that, listen to this. You have we found some tumors have been reported in the literature. We have no mutations, even with deep sequencing. They can't find anything, right? Yeah, and it's a raging tumor, right? Yeah. And then you have normal skin cells are loaded with these driver mutations, but the skin doesn't have any tumors, right? So when you start looking at the absurdity of the gene theory, there's more and more material to say, how could we be so stupid as a species to think these genes are causing anything, right? So, and yet this isn't it, man. You go down to any of these top schools. They got down here at Dana-Farber, they got Broad Institute. They brought the supercomputer, Big Blue or Watson, to ream through millions and millions of gene screen mutations. But no one's told the computer that it's not a genetic disease. That dumbass thing doesn't know what thing from a hole in the ground.
It's got a lot to chew on.
I guarantee you, if it does actually come back and say this is not a genetic disease, they'll reprogram the thing.
I'd really be impressed if the computer could do that. I don't have a function anymore. I can go down to the Caribbean and relax.
Oh my! So Richard, it sounds like you're going to get an A on your next biochem test.
No, I'm going to get an A.
No, you're going to fail. You got to be careful. You're going to fail your test.
I listen to Professor Seyfried. The funny thing is this podcast will actually come out probably while I'm in my exam. So, I know that a lot of people in my class are all tuning into the podcast. So let me just say to my my peeps in Bio 1003, don't listen to anything we're talking about until after the exam, after your genetics exam.
Yeah, you got to love the oncogenes, right? They're they're the transcription factors for regulating fermentation metabolism.
Right.
So when the mitochondria are injured, they signal to the nucleus and says, we're suffocating. Can you help us, right? So the oncogenes turn on, and they bring glucose and glutamine into the cell.
Yeah.
So they're really facilitators. They're not they're facilitating an effect. They're not the cause.
This has got to be a fundamental part of our genetic heritage. Our germline is. I mean, prior to the invention of oxidative phosphorylation, this is how we. This kind of fermentation is how our germline prospered. So, it's got to be very, very fundamental.
Yeah, well, I think the mitochondria in the cells are really underestimated about how important and powerful they are. It's an interesting thing. These two organisms merged, several billion years ago. And this one organism that could capture the energy from oxygen and the sun was able to work and reduce fermentation. So we became metazoans, multicellular organisms, as the result of this synergistic interaction between these two organisms. Now, it's very interesting that the mitochondria has relinquished all of its genetic control to the nucleus except 13 genes.
Yeah, just a ring. Yep.
Those 13 are the key. You damage one of those, and the organism's dead instantly. So, it's like anything. If you get some dumbass that's going to do the job for you, it's just human. It's nature to do that. Any animal would do that.
Delegation.
Right? Yeah, the nucleus is the dumbass slave of this mitochondria. It's doing everything. Why should I do it? But I control the kill switch. You don't do what I say. Now, what happens, of course, if the kill switch doesn't work, the nucleus goes berserk, and you start, fermenting and going back and doing all this stuff. So you put everything into an evolutionary perspective. And I have a whole chapter in my book, chapter 15. Nothing in cancer biology makes sense except in the light of evolution. People have to know this. If they don't know this, then they lack knowledge.
Right.
And you can't understand the nature of the problem unless you put together all these parts.
Right.
And once you do that, it becomes a very manageable disease. We just have to have a trained cadre, a trained staff. And right now, we have no training.
Professor, do you have a fund or something that somebody with $1 bazillion to burn can help fund your research?
Yeah, well, right now, our funding is coming from private foundations. I have funding mostly from Travis Christofferson's Single Cure Foundation.
Excellent.
I tell people because we have an ongoing research grant from that foundation.
He's the author, right?
Yeah, he's the author of Tripping Over the Truth, right? And he basically read my book, and he felt that if I were right about some of the things that I was saying, more and more people should know about this. So he published Tripping Over the Truth, the reemergence of this metabolic theory. And he went around and interviewed some of the top geneticists regarding this, and they were basically clueless about this whole. They heard about it, but they're so locked into, driver genes and this kind of gene and that, mTOR gene, this kind of everything is like, give me a break. So, but you can't, and it's a dogmatic situation. Yeah. So, the National Institutes of Health, which should be funding this kind of work, they do fund metabolism as long as the genes are controlling the metabolism, not the reverse.
So I'm a private individual with $1 million that I want to solve cancer with. Where do I put my money that it ends up to you, your science?
There's two ways to do that. You either support Travis Christofferson, which some people like to do, and then I get grant support through Travis. Or there are some people who say, I want to set up my own grant with Boston College because I can't, as a person, accept any money from anyone.
Yeah,
my university.
We want to fund your research.
Yeah, the research is funded through the university's grants and contracts. Okay. So people would say, okay, I want to be recognized to have a grant through, and then they work out the details that way.
Great.
And I know the CrossFit organization has now become quite interested in what we're doing.
Good.
But, you need, we could solve this whole cancer problem in about 5 years or less.
Yeah.
We already know what we need to do. We just need to fine tune it. Now, this is not what we call sexy science. This is in the trenches kind of science.
Actual science.
We know what we need to do. We just haven't perfected the synergies between the different press and pulse procedures.
Yeah.
It's called dosage, timing, and scheduling.
Right.
Now, I've been working on this, and I've been telling my colleagues at the clinics where we can use press pulse, and they're the ones coming back and sometimes telling me, can you validate this for me? And I'll validate it in the preclinical system because, let's try everything on the because we've developed the singular best models of systemic metastatic cancer and glioblastoma over 20 years in my lab. So we have the very tools that will allow us to test and validate certain procedures. And then I go right to the clinic in either Turkey or Egypt or Hungary or some of these countries that will test our stuff. Not in this gun. Unfortunately, we can't do it in the United States.
It doesn't happen in the US at all? No clinical trials at all?
No, because it violates the standard of care. You could lose your license doing this stuff.
Right.
Well,
even though you're not hurting anybody.
A lot of people will lose their jobs.
Yeah, people will lose their jobs, basically.
Right.
But there's a term that we call retraining. We have a term that we call retraining. It exists in this country, right? The coal miners, the steel workers, they need to be retrained. So, and they're, if they can get another job comparable, so we need to, I'm telling you, we can develop clinics that will, once we understand doses, timing, and scheduling for the different, we degrade the tumor slowly. We never harm the patient. The patient should emerge from the therapy looking much healthier and fit than they were when they started.
And they get to eat bacon.
Yeah, they could eat bacon, but I wouldn't go too far on the bacon. And the food industry is now developing therapies where food is becoming the medicine that works together with these specific drugs.
Yeah.
And the food is really interesting because it's not just the ratio of fats to proteins to carbs. It's not only the ratio, it's the composition of the proteins, fats, and carbs.
Yeah.
And they can work very powerfully together with these other drugs. And this is an emerging field, believe me. We don't know which of these various food items will work best with that drug under that condition.
Yeah.
So clearly is a lot of excitement that's coming down the pike. And we want to make this therapy pretty much fit the standard, the 6 or 8 months that you would normally be treated for cancer. Because you don't go in and get one pill and then you go home.
No.
You're being treated by radiation, followed by chemo, followed by whatever. Yeah. So you want to make sure that you're going to be within the same. And I think that can happen because we're not into blowing the whole hell out of this tumor immediately. We're degrading it and enhancing the health of the body while degrading the tumor. And we're doing it very strategically, taking consideration the immune system, the different fibers, all of the normal cell systems of our body coming together, fighting the tumor. And we're taking the normal cells in our body and making them competitive for the very fuels that the tumor cells need.
Yeah.
So the whole body is now working against the tumor. It's a beautiful system that
That's great.
I kind of feel sorry for the tumors when you're on the job.
Tumor ninja.
Yeah. So, it's going to happen. As I said, the press pulse therapy in time will make most other cancer therapies obsolete. It's just a matter. Once the word gets out, people know what's going on. More and more people come on the web. Hey, I should have been dead. I'm doing fine. Look at me. I never lost a hair. If it even worked better if a bald guy can regrow his hair after metabolic.
Yeah, good luck with that one.
Professor, it's been such a delight talking to you, and thank you for changing the world. It's really an honor.
Thank you. I hope it helps. We do what we can do. And thank you for asking about the funding sources. We need the money bad.
Yeah.
We can move this thing forward so much faster.
It's very important.
So if anybody's interested, I get a lot of calls from Australia. They have the same response as everyone else. Never heard of it. Can't work.
Yeah.
This kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But, in time, your podcasts and things will get the word out. More and more people.
That's what we're hoping.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
This was an absolute pleasure. I enjoyed every minute of this conversation. Thank you.
Me too.
Okay,
Thank you very
good
much.
luck. Take it easy.
Cheers.
Yeah, bye now.
Heard you say you're due for a little.
Wow, he was in a mood, huh?
He gets kind of feisty, but you can understand why. He's been bashing his head against this for 10, 15 years. So, we're just getting the latest incarnation.
Yeah. Well, it was such an honor and a privilege to meet him, and he's the nicest man.
He is.
And I hope we can get to talk to him more on a regular basis, and I hope that we encouraged the right people to help him with his funding. So
yeah. You know who you are.
You know who you are. Anyway, let's eat. It's time for some
Recipe!
kind of a shame that we're not in your studio and we can peg your compressor.
I know.
We've got to moderate our recipes and mail.
Yep, that's right.
So what have you got today, Carl?
Well, today, Richard, I have keto fried rice.
Ooh, nice.
Now, I had been holding off on this because I didn't think that Miracle Rice, which is what I'm using, was actually going to work well for fried rice. But if you think about it, fried rice isn't really like rice. I mean, it's kind of soft and squishy.
Pillowy, yeah.
It's not like rice that sticks together. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I thought that, well, what the heck? I'm going to try this. And of course, my wife loves fried rice.
Okay.
And I want to get her carbs down. So if I can give her a fried rice that is just as good, she might like it. So I'm hoping to make this for her soon without the onions, of course, because she can't eat those. All right. So you take 1 8-ounce package of Miracle Rice. This is a konjac or shirataki rice product. There's actually no rice in it.
No.
But it's
from a root of a plant that and it stores its energy in a form of starch that we can't digest. So
correct. Yeah.
So for us, it's really like fiber. Our gut bacteria can digest it, turn it to short chain fatty acids, but we can't turn it to glucose. Yeah.
Right. So you take 1 8-ounce package of Miracle Rice. You're going to need 1 or 2 strips of bacon, depending on how big they are. If you got a great big strip of thick bacon, you could use 1 or 2. I really don't care how many you put in your fried rice. It's all good. You're going to need 2 tablespoons of butter, a 1/4 cup of chopped onions.
Okay.
You're going to need some bean sprouts, about 1/2 cup, a teaspoon of chopped garlic or 1 clove chopped. You're going to need 1 teaspoon of toasted sesame oil and a tablespoon of soy sauce.
Yeah.
Yep. You need 1 egg. And finally, a tablespoon or so of chopped scallions or green onions. Cool. So you drain and rinse the Miracle Rice. Now, you know, we talked about shirataki noodles before and how some of them have a stink.
Yeah, they have to be shipped in liquid or they'll fall apart. So, you know, and it has to be alkalized, the liquid. And so it has a slight fishy smell to it. But you just wash it with water and nuke it a bit.
This product, Miracle Rice, doesn't smell at all.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, I have yet to open a package that smells.
Nice.
So just open it up, drain it, rinse it well in a colander, and you want to remove the excess water, and you can do that with a dish towel or a paper towel. Just get all the water out of it. Yeah. Now you're going to heat up the butter in a saucepan. All right, to melt that butter over medium heat.
Yeah, melted butter, yeah.
Melted butter. I could stop right there.
No, keep going. I need some bacon with this melted butter.
That's right. Now you're going to add the onions, garlic, bean sprouts, and Miracle Rice.
Right.
And saute all that around in the butter until the onions start to caramelize. You can take this to whatever level you want. If you like really caramelized onions, you know, you can continue sautéing. Just test the Miracle Rice, and when it tastes good to you, that's when you move on.
Yeah, that fat will stop the Miracle Rice from clumping, so you'll get that true sort of fried rice kind of
exactly.
flavor, yeah.
So now you stir in the bacon.
Yeah, bacon.
Yep. And crack the egg into the pan and mix that all in. You want to just mix it up. You're like scrambling an egg in it. And now you want to stir in the soy sauce and sesame oil.
Okay.
Now, salt and black pepper to taste, but here's the thing. Taste it first because it may already be salty enough from the soy sauce and the bacon. So taste it first, but yeah, you might need to add a little more. And black pepper certainly doesn't hurt in any case. And so now once it's good and you like it, now just stir in the scallions really quickly so that they don't really have a chance to cook. Right. But they're integrated, and then serve immediately.
Julie's actually got a technique that she uses when she makes fried rice for the egg. And apparently it's a traditional technique. It uses a wok. What you do is you crack the egg into a bowl and you blend it. So you're basically mixing the whites and the yolks of the egg together. And then you add like 1/2 tablespoon of fish sauce. And that sort of, it goes a little bit darker in color. Stir that in, and then you put it into a really hot wok and you move the wok around so that it evenly coats the surface, and then you flip you basically made a fish sauce tasting omelette. You flip that out onto a board and you slice it up into strips. And then, so when you make your fried rice, you add that towards the end of it, and it gives you that sort of egg texture.
That's rice. A great idea because it stays firm, right?
And it doesn't blend into the mix. Yeah.
Interesting.
That's it.
Very cool. All right, Richard, what do you got?
I'm going to do chocolate again. My recipe is going to be espresso chocolates. And anybody who came to the Keto Minifest would have tasted the chocolates that we tempered there. So we're talking about a similar kind of texture, not the overwhelming lemon myrtle flavour that we did. So this chocolate, what we're going to do is we're going to start with 200 grams cacao butter. Now, this is the fat from chocolate.
Right.
And we managed to find some at Fiddleheads in New London. You basically get it from an organic produce store, and it could be called cocoa fat or cocoa butter or cacao butter. They're all the same thing.
All right.
So what we're going to do is we're going to 200 grams of cacao butter, we're going to melt it. And to that, we're going to add a smidgen of sucralose or other powdered sweetener. Is that a real measurement? A smidgen is actually a real measurement. It's precisely 1/32 of a teaspoon.
Wow.
So
here in America, it's just a vague measurement. Just put a smidgen of that in and a smidgen of this.
Yeah, or a dash of that. Yeah.
Yeah, dash.
Yeah. So all of these sort of vague measurements came from somewhere, and there was a precise measurements for this is before chemistry existed. We used to have alchemists, and they had all of these precise measurements for things. Yeah. So anyway, to that we're going to add 100 grams of ground coffee beans. So we're not actually adding cocoa powder to it, or if we would make dark chocolate, we'd use cocoa powder. If we made white chocolate, we'd use milk powder. I'm actually adding ground coffee beans, and I'm going to melt the cacao butter, and I'm going to steep the ground coffee beans in that to get the espresso flavour across.
Wow, what a great idea.
These are really coffee flavour and full of caffeine. These things will keep you awake.
Buzz.
Ask me how I know. So, so anyway, you let this steep for maybe half an hour, and it's going to get a lot of the coffee flavour, and the actual colour of the liquid will go brown because it's the coffee. What we want to do is we want to filter the solid grounds out. So I use a kitchen towel, one of these disposable blue kitchen towels that you see on a roll.
Sure.
I put one of those folded into a colander, and I pour the melted liquid through it. Now, normally with a kitchen towel, you normally wash them beforehand.
Right.
But you don't want any water in this mixture, because any water that gets into contact with the cacao butter will seize it up. It'll turn it into nasty sort of stuff.
Yep.
We're going to filter the grounds out, and because we're doing it through this kitchen towel, we can basically squeeze the kitchen towel to get the last drops of this melted cacao butter with coffee flavour and sweetener in it. And we put it all into a plastic bag, and it could be a Ziploc bag, it could be a vacuum sucking bag. And then we go through the same tempering process we spoke about 2 weeks ago, I think we did it.
Yeah, that's
basically, we take it up to a melted temperature. Well, it's already there, obviously, because it's melted. So we take it down to 27 Celsius, which is about 80 Fahrenheit, and that is going to set all of the crystals the way we want them to be. And then we take it up to our working temperature, which is about 90 Fahrenheit or 32 Celsius, and it can stay there until we're ready to use it. And I put these into molds shaped in the shape of coffee beans.
Yeah.
And they came out, and they were delicious. And I made them before I flew to America, and I fully intended to take some with me to America. And of course, I left them all at home. By the time I got back from my trip, there was only a few left.
Oh, well.
So anyway, that's my recipe for the day.
Very good. Very good. Well, that's the show. It's a good one. It was a long one, but it was just a pleasure to meet Professor Seyfried, as I said before, and we're very excited about his research.
Yeah. Of course, if you have anything you want to tell us, something we said wrong, something you don't agree with, some more research you found to support or refute anything we've said, send it by email to dudes@2ketodudes.com or post it on our website.
And you can follow us on Twitter at 2ketodudes, on Instagram at 2ketodudes. Make sure to use the hashtag 2ketodudes. Now we're also on Twitch.
Yeah, at 2ketodudes.
2ketodudes, yeah.
And, of course, if you want to join the free Ketogenic forum, it's forum.2keto.com.
And if useless swag is your fancy T-shirts, coffee mugs, all that other junk, head over to gear.2keto.com.
And if you want a shot at getting some of that swag for free, join the 2 Keto Dudes fan club. You'll be eligible to win something in every show. Go to fanclub.2keto.com.
And if you feel like supporting our forums and all the podcasts we produce, including 2 Keto Dudes, Keto Woman with Daisy Brackenhall, and the Obesity Code podcast with Jason Fung and Megan Ramos, think about making a monthly pledge on our Patreon page at patreon.2keto.com.
Or just hit the donate button on our website at www.2ketodudes.com, or just go to donate.2keto.com.
And you can also see all of our podcasts and other videos and live streams on YouTube at youtube.2keto.com.
And if you haven't already, go leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. That's how new people get to know about what we do.
2 Keto Dudes is brought to you by 2 Keto LLC, who strives to support the low-carb community with podcasts and other publications. And lastly, Richard, keep calm and keto on.
Yeah, keep calm and keto on, Carl.
All right. And we'll see you next time
on 2 Keto Dudes.